It is said that a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, there's new evidence that suggests that might not be actually accurate. We process about 100 bits per second when we read words on a page. But when we look at a picture, we're processing about 1 billion bits per second. So, technically, if we wanted to say, it could be closer to the mark of saying that a picture is worth about 10 million words. I want to paint a picture for you today, but even to paint the picture, I want to frame it. And I want to frame it by, if you weren't here last week, Pastor Ben, who's our youth pastor, he shared a message that's bringing us into this series where we're talking about the bind that we find ourselves in, that we just don't have enough time. That we live in an age of overcommitment. There's all of these things, and we use this rope as an image of this, where we have all of these demands of either what we put on ourselves or what other people put on us or what we think other people put on us of the things that we need to do. Family, work, school, hobbies, you name it, all of those things. And probably for most of us, there might be somebody here who has this all figured out at this point, but for most of us, that rope is too short. There is just not enough time. And so what ends up happening is that we cheat. We take some time that we should be giving to one place, and when we take it and we adjust it and we shorten it and we take it over and we give it over here. And what we're leaning into is that it seems like the pattern is that what often happens is that we cheat and we steal time from the relationships that are most important in our lives. And so we had a rock. And Richie Baldwin, if you didn't know this, he held this all 3 services. And this rock represents, really what it represents is our absence. That, okay, the people that we love, these most important relationships, I'm not able to be with you right now. So here, hold this. You're going to suffer my absence. You're going to feel the weight of me not being with you for a time. But the issue of this absence, it's one thing if it's once in a while. But what if it's the pattern? What if this isn't just about a day or a week? What if this is months and years, and you just keep holding, and then this rock, it represents something else. It represents rejection. It represents deprioritization. And over time, what will happen is that the rock drops. And now we're left picking up the pieces. And we're going to talk about that today. And even better, not just about picking up the pieces, but avoiding having to pick up the pieces. Making a change before the rock drops. Before we do something that truly damages the relationship. And I'm framing the picture that I want to give. And so here's the problem that we have, but we also have this. We believe that we have a Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, who wants to lead us into life that is really life. He has plans for us. He has a way of life for us. And it's not waiting to die till we go to heaven. It is beginning to live a better life now. And He understands the world that we live in and the pressures that are on us, and He wants to help us with that. So here's the picture. Technically, I've given you a bunch of pictures, but they are all the same image. Family, friends, sitting around a table, enjoying a wonderful meal, sharing life together. Now, there is amazing thing with food. Food does this thing where you put it, you give somebody some food and they get it in front of them and it starts to make them feel a little more comfortable. Just so you know, this is why one of the reasons truly why we have food and coffee out in the narthex, because we want everybody to know that, okay, we start opening up. This is a safe place. And that sense is that when we sit down with people around a table and we have food and we start to eat and to drink and to laugh and share life. This is what we're fighting for. One of the pictures that we get in Scripture about salvation and what to expect in life is a meal, a banquet, a great party where people are laughing and they're singing and they're gathering together and they're sharing life, and this is good. Jesus was famous and notorious for the fact that he shared meals. Religious leaders looked and they said, what are you doing? You're eating with these people and they're sinners. Jesus is like, of course, because I've come to restore relationships. And what better place for relationships to be built up and restored than around a table? Yes, it signifies friendship. Yes, it signifies acceptance. That's what I've come to do. And it is no mistake that one of our central acts in Christian worship is the celebration of the Lord's table. This place where we come and we gather around. And the thing is, see, at the Christian table, everybody is welcome. Everybody is invited. Everyone belongs and everyone is accepted, and there is nothing that can't be dealt with and reconciled at this table. And one of the things to know is that as we practice this in worship, it's supposed to leak over into every table fellowship that we enjoy. Now, not every tableship experience is redemptive. So here's a picture of a family eating and watching TV, and it's a shifting of sitting around and talking, and I share this picture because when I was a kid, I have an older brother and a sister, and they're 6 and 8 years older, and when they moved out of the house, we stopped eating meals around the table. And we had TV trays, and that really was our meal experience, and something was lost. And I didn't really realize this until a number of years later when I went and I went over to my wife's house. And they spent like an hour or more at the dinner table, and they just sat and they talked. And there was this part where it was just like, wow, this is kind of cool. You mean I just don't eat really quickly and then go off and do my thing? Now it's not just television today. Here's another couple pictures. This is what we're battling. Because, it used to be that everybody would watch the same TV, but now everybody has their smartphone, and they're all doing their own thing at the very same time. But we can't lay this all to blame on technology. My dad shares the story that when he was a kid, he would go up to his grandparents' home in Linden, and his grandmother was quite efficient and capable of the horse and buggy, because that's what they had. And she had a switch from her horse and buggy that she kept under the table. And if any child got out of line, she could flick that switch and hit them under the table, whatever seat. And so, again, not every table fellowship will be redemptive. But what I want to put forward is to miss out on that experience of regularly gathering with family, friends, where you eat around a table and you enjoy the food, and you laugh and you share life. This is what we're fighting for. There is a big difference between making a living and making a life. And we do not live for work. We work so that we can live. For your family, for your friends, this one picture, this might be what God calls you to do. You know what? We need to carve out some time because we've lost something. Let's make a commitment that we're going to start to have some times where we regularly sit down around the table and we just enjoy sharing life together in a meal. And that's the part. We need to taste the good life. Now, that's one picture. But here's the question. Do you know what your friends and especially your family want from you more than anything else? Any guesses? Time. This series is really working well because everybody's guessing this. And the answer is yes, kind of true. But see, they want love, but they want to feel loved. They want to feel cherished. They want to feel like they matter in your life. And one of the primary ways that we demonstrate that they matter is through time. That's it. On a practical term, it means that we have them be a priority. And we reason, well, they are my priority. I really value them above my job, my career, my activities, my hobbies, my me time. That's good, but the key of this is not just that what you know in your mind, but this is the key of all of this is that they feel it. That they actually feel cherished, prioritized, valued. Imagine growing up in a home where you didn't know if you were really a top priority of your mom or your dad, where you had to compete for their affections, and sometimes where you actually got the affection, there wasn't much there at all. Now, here's the sad thing is for some of us, you don't have to imagine it. That's what you grew up with. And it's going to be harder. You don't know what this is all like. You don't know what it could be. That was a little bit of my experience of going to my wife's family and going, well, you guys talk around the table. You spend a lot of time. I mean, this is different. There's good. But if this is your story where you've not experienced this sense of really being prioritized by the people who are most important and to whom you should be the most important to, let me give you this encouragement. Jesus wants to lead you into life that's really life. And you have the opportunity to change your legacy. You may not have experienced it, but that doesn't mean that has to be the way that things are for you any longer. In my family, it's we Kinnickers, we do this. Well, I want to change the legacy. We Kinnickers, we enjoy sitting around a table and sharing life together. And that's something that we can do. Now, again, if you're not grown up with it, it's going to be a little more difficult, I think. But Jesus is with you. He's for you. He can give you strength. He can give you vision. He's going to help you with this. If you're married, I'm going to guess in your vows at some place, I'm a pastor, I do a lot of weddings. Every wedding I've ever been to, there is this. The husband and the wife make commitment that you're going to be the most important human relationship that I have. I'm committing that to you. You're my top loyalty. You're my number one commitment. Our spouses, we give them the expectation that they should feel that. So what are they feeling? The people most important to us. Do they know that we truly value them? Now, you see, the thing is the loved ones in our life, they're willing to hold this because there's a certain expectation that this is all about love. And love can be a wonderful dance. I'm going to show love to you, and I fill you up with love, and then you express love to me. But remember what I said is that if our schedule, if our time, if the way that we're living out our priorities keeps asking those most important to us to hold this rock, and it's not just for a day and it's not just for a week, but it becomes the pattern, then instead of being a dance of love where they do this, they suffer our absence because they love us and there's this other thing and they understand that, but you're going to come back and we're going to share life. But if it keeps, you're just holding this is no longer a sign of love. This becomes a sign of what everybody dreads, which is rejection. So the next question. What are those closest to you feeling right now? Are they feeling more cherished and prioritized? Or are they beginning to feel neglected, not valued? And what I want to say is before the rock ever drops, let's divert it. Let's begin leading into this. Now, I will share with you, there's a certain part. You know that whole thing of Myers-Briggs of feelers and thinkers? So I'm a thinker. And so for me, it takes me a while to catch up to feelings. So in all of this, there's this one part for me where I really wish that it would make life easy for me if everybody had like a little gauge on their foreheads that I could read, and I could just know what is going on and go, oh, okay, so you're feeling loved and valued and cherished, and that's wonderful, and okay. How many people would like that? Some of you. Now, instead of gauges, what we have are faces. And hopefully we pay attention to the faces of the people who are most important to us. But the thing about faces is, and this is the thing about, it'd be nice with gauges, because what happens is I read faces and I sit there and I go, is everything okay? Is there a problem? No, nothing. Really? I'm not so sure. I mean, and see, this is the part where between having a gauge, which we won't have, and not everybody wants to have a gauge, and I think there's a reason for this, and that is that I think that, you know, if there's something wrong, it's complicated and it's going to take time, and people are complicated, so we need to give time to the situation. So we don't have these gauges. We have faces, and they need to be read and interpreted and figured out, and it takes time to do that. And this is all part of the good design of how this all works itself out. But between a gauge and then where the response is nothing, we have to figure out a way in our relationships to really lean into and get to that place where we can understand what's the state of the relationship. How are things really going? Now, I will share with you, just a couple of years after my wife and I got married, we with our small group, we read a book that was called The 5 Love Languages, and by Gary Chapman. If you've never read it, I give it to every couple that I do premarital counseling with, because I just think it is just a helpful tool. I have some of the couples are out here and they're saying, yes, he does, and that's true, I do. And because I think it's a helpful tool. It helped my wife and I. If you've never read it, I'm going to recommend, go and read it. This can be helpful. And the idea of the 5 love languages is that we give and receive love in different ways because we're different. And there's kind of basic 5 ways he talks about. And if you're a quality time person, this whole series is just right in your alley. You're saying, yes, just keep going, because you're talking about making sure we spend time together. My wife and I were reading this, and he ends up actually having a metaphor that's like this gauge that you see. He says, you know, couples, what I want you to think about doing is instead of getting to the place where you have to go and see a counselor because everything's so bad, I want you to focus on building up the relationship, and the imagery is a love tank. Keep your love tank full. Everything goes better when you're operating out of this real sense of the fullness of love. And so ask, how's your love tank? What's going on? How are you feeling? Now, I find this to work really well with my wife. But when it comes to my kids and my friends, I adjust the language a little bit. You know, hey, Ernie, how's your love tank? You know, it's not that, hey, Jeff, you know, can we, it's just that thing where it's just like, yeah, it just doesn't feel right for me. But, okay, yeah. I know Ernie would say that. Yes, I did. Come give me a hug. No, I'm kidding, Ernie. Don't give me a hug. Just, that's okay. But we need to get to the place where we can ask that question. It might be the thing for you guys today, whether it's with your spouse or with your kids or even with your friends. How are you guys feeling about our relationship and how I'm prioritizing you or not? Because what happens when what they come back with is, I'm feeling like I'm at the bottom? Well, it means it's a time for change. And we're going to turn to Daniel. And we're going to look at Daniel, who gives a wonderful, his story, his life. It gives us a picture of learning how to make godly change, how to lean into the pressures and the stress of life, and then choose the way of God. Daniel was an amazing person. I want you to picture, so it's 605 BC. Jerusalem, the kingdom of Judea has shrunk down to just almost barely the capital of Jerusalem. And Daniel is probably around 14 or 15 years old. And the greatest empire of the day, Babylon, comes and conquers the city. And what ends up happening in this is that the king takes the best and the brightest in a certain age range, these young boys between the ages of like 13 and 16, and he ships them off out of the capital to Babylon, where they're going to get trained up. And this is what our scripture passage is about, telling this ordeal of what happened. I'm going to read from Daniel chapter 1, beginning in verse 3. Then the king ordered Ashpenaz, chief of his court officials, to bring into the king's service some of the Israelites from the royal family and the nobility, young men without any physical defect, handsome, showing aptitude for every kind of learning, well-informed, quick to understand, and qualified to serve in the king's palace. He was to teach them the language and literature of the Babylonians. The king assigned them a daily amount of food and wine from the king's table. They were to be trained for 3 years, and after that, they were to enter the king's service. Now, this might be surprising for you, but the place of difficulty for Daniel in all of what happened, where he said, okay, enough's enough, I've got to do something, was actually over the issue of food. And it wasn't that he didn't want to eat. It's just that it's what the food symbolized. And there's at least two things going on with this. One is that Daniel was Jew, and he was raised with the Jewish customs and the Jewish religion, and they had a covenant. I'm going to be your God, and you're going to be my people, and you're going to live a distinctive sort of life. And part of that distinctive life is you're going to pay attention to what you eat. And if you look at the food laws in the Old Testament, there is one aspect of it where very clearly God was concerned of just giving them healthy diet that would avoid getting poisoned or contamination. But another part of it was to be distinctive, was to stand out, was to have that sense of identity. And so part of this was the food was unclean, and that's an issue. But there's something more going on with this as well. The food at the king's table would have been choice food. It would have been good food. It would have been richer fare than what you would get at most tables. But part of this was because the food had been sacrificed to the gods of the Babylonians. And so what Daniel understood is that when I eat this food, I'm actually saying that I'm going to have loyalty to the gods of the Babylonians. And that became the issue for him no, that's something I can't do, because then that's saying I'm not going to be loyal to my God. Now, it's at this moment that we start to see Daniel's true character. Just who he was and what he believed. I want you to think about this. He's 14, he's 15 years old. His home country was defeated. Everything in the surrounding culture taught Daniel that when his country was defeated, his God was defeated. And it may be that his parents are dead, but all of his family and friends, whoever survived, is now left behind. He's been brought into the palace of the greatest king in the world, of the greatest empire of its day. Did my God abandon me? Is my God defeated? My life is on the line. I'm only a 15-year-old boy. I'm only a slave in the king's court. Here's the system of how things go. What am I going to do about my God? And can my God do anything? Because is he defeated? I mean, I'm here. Look at this. I'm in exile. I'm in prison. I'm a slave now. And I want to put forward that in one small slice, Daniel's situation and ours have a parallel. There were two parties that wanted something from Daniel, and he couldn't satisfy the demands of both. There was the expectation of his God, and then there was the expectation of the king of Babylon. And on this issue of the food diet, somebody's going to be disappointed. Well, the mirror is that we have a whole bunch of demands and commitments upon us, and there's not enough time to go around. So somebody's going to be disappointed because we're going to shortchange them with time because we don't have enough time. For Daniel, it was Babylon and the God. It was the king of Babylon, and it was the God that he couldn't see, the Lord his God. And the question becomes, what would you have done? Now, on the one hand, you're wrestling through and you know something about your God. He's invisible. I can't really see him. But he has these words, and he says that he is faithful, and he is kind, and he is merciful, and he is patient, and he doesn't treat us as our sins deserve. I mean, won't he be understanding in this situation? I mean, now look I don't have any options. It's either I eat or I die. This isn't very good. And then there's the other side. There's the king of Babylon. He is a merciless, conquering tyrant. And he has a system in place that has created the greatest empire on the face of the earth. What is the likelihood that this king is going to change his system for me, a 15-year-old slave? Now, if you're familiar with the story, then you know what happens is that Daniel chooses God. And you know, and hindsight's always helpful in this. Well, of course, you choose God. I mean, obviously. But is that what we do in our own lives? I've got all these demands, and I've got to cheat time. I've got to cheat with time someplace. Where am I going to do it? Do I even think about putting God in the mix? Am I really living out of the priorities that I believe God is calling me to live out of, or am I really just doing it on my own? And there's always that thing where you can say, well, you know, this is a little bit different. Well, maybe you're right. I mean, maybe it is different. You know, Daniel's life was on the line. What's on the line for you? Well, it's my job. Okay, but which one's a little more difficult? Maybe this situation is different. Maybe this is too complicated for God. I mean, you know, God may have figured out things for Daniel, but my situation might be different. And you see, the thing is that if God is really calling us to make a change, where we know that we're not living out of the priorities that we should, it's like walking to the edge of a precipice, and you don't see the bottom, and you're saying, I'm supposed to do something here. That's scary. We mostly step back from that sort of a thing. Let's break this down a little more. This is about loyalty. Daniel's choice of diet was indication of where he placed his loyalty. I want to put forward for us, one of the main ways that our loyalty is demonstrated is through our time, through our schedule, what we prioritize, what we commit. We probably don't usually think of loyalty in that way. We probably think about the loyalty of what I know inside. My family's most important. In fact, you know, for me, it's about relationships. God first, wife second, kids, and then church family, friends, okay? Relationships are first. Work comes later. But again, this is about the fact that it's not just what my stated loyalty is, but does my schedule actually show it? Am I actually living based upon what I say I believe? Now, this is what Daniel did. The first thing that Daniel did is he made a choice. But Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the royal food and wine. And I want to put forward to you that this is where lasting change begins. It begins with a decision. Now, I am all in on making wise decisions and giving time to a process of deciding. I don't think that we should fly off the handle. I don't think we should just jump off the edge without understanding the consequences or knowing why and what we're trying to do. But it begins with a decision where, regardless of what the outcome may be, I know what I need to do because it's the right thing to do. Regardless of what may come, I'm not going to abandon my allegiance. And what Daniel shows us is my allegiance to my invisible king. He's going to trump this. This is better. This is more. This is right. This is first. What should we do? Again, we'll feel the heat. We're standing on the edge of a precipice. And you know what's amazing is when we start to actually feel the pressure of wow, this is kind of scary. The fear drives us to a certain clarity. Suddenly we become prognosticators. We know the future. Well, what if? If you were to tell me that I were supposed to make a change to my schedule and I were to go in and talk to my boss that something needs to change because this isn't just working right, I could lose my job. Or I won't get my bonus, or I won't get and you go from knowing, there's only one person who knows the future. We may have ideas. We should have clear sense of the potential consequences, but only God knows the future. And then there's the whatabouts. Well, but see, they understand, right? Because, what about my kid's college fund? What about, our retirement? What's going to happen? Some of you are retired. But some of us, if we don't make a change, if we don't start living out priorities where we value the ones in our lives first, the money's not going to go for retirement, it's going to go for divorce lawyers. This is a real issue where this destroys the trust in relationships. So we've got to live out of right priorities. Now, Daniel, he makes a choice. And then he makes a plan. Next week, Pastor Carl is going to talk more about making a plan. And what we're really talking about is making a plan where we're discerning and seeking the Lord's will for our life. What is his priorities for us? Every once in a while, our family's priorities for us are not godly. Every once in a while, we have to push back against those things. The question here is, what does God want? He wants to lead me into life. What are the priorities that he sets for me? Now, Daniel makes a plan. And let me tell you about his plan. It's terrible. It is not a good plan. It is unreasonable. It is absurd. I'm a 15-year-old slave, and I'm going to go and I'm going to ask to be an exception. And he asked the chief official for permission not to defile himself in this way. This is a bad plan. I want you to think about this for a second. I don't know how many of you have either read or seen an adaptation of Dickinson's Oliver. But, this is kind of the classic thing where Oliver's the little orphan boy, and he's in the orphanage, and there's the terrible, harsh master of the orphanage, and he wants more food. And so he goes forward with his little bowl, and he says, "Please, sir, could I have some more?" And everybody quiets. The whole room just goes into silence. Nobody asks for more. Are you nuts? Don't you know what's going to happen? And exactly what you think would happen happens, and it's all downhill for little Oliver. That's what this is like. You're a 15-year-old slave, and you're going to ask, can this be different for me? What do you think are the chances that the greatest empire in the world that built itself up in its program, and it has King Nebuchadnezzar, who's their greatest king, and this is his process, and he has this person who's in charge of just executing his will. And if you don't do his will, there's a good likelihood that you will just be put to death. What is the likelihood that this is going to be listened to? Any? Somebody said 0.01 last service. Zero, zilch, no chance. This is what happened. Now, God had caused the official to show favor and compassion to Daniel. The now God factor changed everything. And what we're talking about is for us to be people who put our trust in God, that we're seeking his guidance, his leadership, him to set the priorities. And just so you know, I am not preaching this message from the cheap seats. I am right in the middle of this. I mean, I have so many demands. My wife and I, kids, every elementary school, middle school, we have soccer, we have cheerleading and school. And this is something where trying to hold all of this together, it's not easy. So what do? Well, you include God in it. God, you've called me to be a husband, a father, a friend, a brother in Christ, a pastor, a citizen. There's all of these different commitments that I have. And I can't fill them all. So I need some help. And I want you to help set the priority. You said you'll lead me. You said you'll guide me. Okay, Lord, what do you want me to do? What are the priorities that I need to prioritize? Now, here's the thing about the God factor, the now God factor. Wouldn't it be nice if God told you in advance how this is all just going to work out? Oh, by the way, Daniel, when you go and you meet with Ashpenaz, he's going to be very favorable to you and it'll all work out that way. But he doesn't get that. He doesn't know what's going to happen. The likelihood is it's not going to go good. Why does he go? Because he probably doesn't have any other choice. I know. I'm going to stay loyal. Even if it means my life, I'm going to stay loyal. So what can I do? Okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to talk and see if they'll make an exception. Bad idea, but I don't have any other options because I'm committed here. And he gave room for God, and God acted. And again, Carl's going to talk more about making the plan. We're not talking about just blindly jumping off and making foolish decisions. We're talking about a discernment process of seeking the Lord's will for your life. But I want to end with this. If you don't make the decision to live out of the priorities that God sets for you, you will never get the now God factor in your life. And let me say that the now God factor is where this whole life really starts to begin and get interesting. Because we start to see God at work and what he can do. And we see his miracles and his power. And this isn't just a story about me, but this is a story about what God wants to do in and through me and for us. And so I can tell you this. If you always play it safe, if you always step back, if you always just try to keep managing everything on your own, you're not going to have enough time. And you're never going to experience the now God factor. So let us pray.